I was sure that I was not ready to have a child. He literally held my hand and told me that she was saving my life. And 2 seconds later, I lost balance. I just got lightheaded. Hi, I'm Portia Tshilisanani Mjikeliso, and I'm a mom to a beautiful young little man. His name is Mjikeliso, the love of my life, besides my husband. Yes, he's definitely stolen my heart. This is just a story about my childbirth experience. My son is now 1 year, 8 months old, and I gave birth in a private hospital via emergency C-section. So my husband and I got married in 2017, 4th November 2017. Initially I had a lot of lower abdominal issues, so I got into the marriage thinking, first thing, make a baby, because I had heard a lot of stories about me not being able to carry a baby because I had my own issues. But I was not on any kind of contraceptive or anything like that when we got married. So we were married for about 1.5 years and just having sex with no protection or anything like that. And then a year and a half later is when we got pregnant. We didn't plan to initially fall pregnant at that time. We thought we'd fall pregnant immediately within the beginning of the marriage. But, well, God's plan was 1.5 years later. Initially, I remember asking God, God, can I have time, a little bit of time with my husband, and then you can bless us with a baby? And I guess God was hearing me, and we had our baby 1.5 years later. Oh well, we found out we were pregnant 1.5 years later. So how I found out I was pregnant or I was expecting, it was after I made lamb chops and I couldn't stand the smell. It was horrible, and for someone who loves meat, I hated it on that specific day. So I just thought I had like chala. So I went, I took the food to work the next day, and I was in the office where I had like a kitchen on the side, and so I warmed the food and it was just as horrible, and I gave it to one of our cleaners and she ate it. I couldn't stand it. So I thought to myself, okay, maybe I should detox. So that Friday I went and I bought detox pills, and I had planned to detox the Saturday morning. Then we had a girls' night or girls' day or something like that. I forgot to take it. Then Sunday I had church. I still forgot to take it. So in the evening when I was just chilling at home, I just thought, you know what, I have a pregnancy test in my bag. Let me take a pregnancy test. But then I also heard that you should take a pregnancy test in the morning. So I thought, okay, Monday morning I'll be taking my pregnancy test. So I took the pregnancy test on the 4th of June, Monday morning. Woke up that morning, got my pregnancy test, took it out of the box so I didn't shoot, so my husband wouldn't suspect anything, threw the box away into the bin, and I went to the bathroom and I peed on a stick, put the stick down, got into the shower. Literally 5 minutes I was done with the shower. I was just too anxious to see the results, and funny enough, that moment my mind went blank on me. I did not know what 2 lines meant. I got a towel, ran back to the dustbin and read the box, and 2 lines meant pregnant. So the 4th of June was when I found out I was pregnant, 4th of June 2019. Then I was in so much shock, I couldn't keep the news to myself. I was too scared. I went straight to my husband. At the time we were staying in a bachelor's apartment, and I just went to the next room and I showed him the test, and he laughed at me. Like, he laughed, literally like tears and all. And he's like, okay, don't worry about it. We'll get another test and we'll test tomorrow. I went to work. I was so scared. I was terrified. I went to work, didn't share the news with anybody except a friend of mine. I sent her a WhatsApp. I'm like, dude, this is what's going on. And she's like, just take another test and see. So the next morning, fast forward to the 5th of June, in the morning, my husband had gotten a clear blue test, digital test, and I was 3+ weeks pregnant, and shock of my life. I couldn't be excited. I was not excited at all. I won't lie. I was so scared that I had a little person in my womb, or a little being, whatever that is. And from then on, that's when we took our first step to see a gynae and get the official checkup done and be 100% sure that indeed I was pregnant. And yeah, I was pregnant. And one of the few people that I shared my story with was my mom. And I shared this news with her because she was always so scared that I wouldn't have children. And it was just one of those things that she always kept saying as a child. She always used to say, Portia, the way you love children, I pray God will bless you with your own. Every single time she would say it. And it kind of made me feel like, okay, maybe I might not have kids. And the way that she kept saying it, it felt like people who love other people's children can't have children of their own. She was ecstatic. She was so happy when she heard about my pregnancy. She was so happy. And I obviously shared with my spiritual mom, and that was a beautiful experience all on its own. Yeah, and then so after I found out about my pregnancy, like the morning sickness went in on me. I kept consulting with my mom. My mom was like my second doctor. Every single time I would tell her that, you know what, this is what I'm feeling and this is how bad it is. She always encouraged me and said, 3 months, like once your first trimester is over, you'll be fine. Like it's gonna get better. Oh my gosh, it never got better. It actually got worse. So I survived on oats. I ate oats, breakfast, lunch, and supper. Snack, whatever, oats. Everything was oats. I couldn't down anything. I couldn't even drink water to a certain point. I also couldn't drink juice. So it's like I had to kind of force the water down because I needed water, because I would be dehydrated from all the vomiting and the saliva. It was horrible. It was a horrible experience. So that was first trimester. Then second trimester, I felt the most beautiful in my second trimester. I felt like I looked so beautiful. My skin tone was beautiful. Like I was glowing. I was just a hot mama. But the one thing that really made me feel so down about my pregnancy was the constant nausea that never stopped. I vomited at least 3 times a day. I couldn't stand certain smells. I couldn't stand smells, perfumes. I couldn't stand certain people. I couldn't stand certain faces. It was just crazy. And I think for me, my pregnancy, I won't lie, I didn't enjoy, which is so sad to say because I love my son so much. But I had such bad experiences that I don't think I want to do that again. I don't think I'll do it again. But by the grace of God, He kept me for that entire 42 weeks until the last day. I told myself I would never be the girl with a cup for the saliva and everything. I ended up there. I told myself that I would be a confident, pregnant mama. I lost all my confidence. Although I could take a nice picture of myself and look really nice, but it was one hell of an experience. I don't think I'm ready to do that again. Yeah, no way. Okay, so the day before I had my baby boy, So that was on the 15th of January. That was the day that I was going for my last checkup with my gynecologist. And so initially, when I think about 7 months, when I was 7 months pregnant, I kind of got diagnosed with some kind of high blood pressure. And so, okay, I was fine with the high blood pressure. So I kept thinking that no, I'm still gonna do my vaginal birth as I had initially planned from the get-go. So fine, to a point where our doctor had even said that we should have a blood pressure machine and send him my blood pressure results every single day. So we went to see my doctor on the 15th of January 2020, and that was the day that he told me that my blood pressure is too high and I will need to do an emergency C-section, as I was 41 weeks, I think 3 days, round about there, almost 42 weeks. And so he decided that I should rather come in the next day for a C-section because he was worried about my blood pressure. Okay, then I had to gather myself because I had initially planned for a vaginal birth. I had to obviously go pray about that. I was devastated, obviously, because I didn't want to have to handle the recovery and all of that. So, okay, fast forward to the day of the C-section. I woke up early that morning. I was hungry. I was very hungry and I wasn't allowed to eat. So got to the hospital. They started preparing us for the C-section, and thank God it was before COVID. So we didn't have to do any kind of test or anything like that. So we got there, we got into our room, our private room, and they started preparing me. The spinal doctor came, I don't know what they called him, to check my spinal cord and to see if everything was in place. I got a whole lot of blood pressure tests being done on me, and then I was on a drip for some time, and I was on some machine that was hooked onto my belly, and I could hear my baby's heartbeat. And I remember on that day specifically, I was sure that I was not ready to have a child. At that moment, I remember telling my pastor who was with me at the time, my lady pastor, she was sitting in the same room, and I was telling her that I don't want this child. I don't know how they'll get this child out of me, but I am not doing this. Actually, I want to walk out. I don't want to do this. And she kept convincing me that, you know what, Portia, like the moment your baby's here, you'll be so in love. You won't even remember what happened. You'll just be so in love with your baby boy. Oh, well, I couldn't really run away because the baby was in my belly. So I was given there's a sour drink that I was given to help with the nausea. The nausea once I get the epi on my back. So that mixture, whatever it was, medication, made me fall asleep. I remember taking like an hour nap just before my C-section. I was prepped by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 p.m. and my C-section was at 3. And a group of nurses came to fetch me, pushed me all the way through the hallway, and I was convinced that I was about to die. So I got into the theater room. I've watched a lot of movies, so I was sure that a whole lot of needles and a whole lot of razors were about to come out. And I was put on the bed, and I remember having to hold on to a pillow, and my feet were put on a chair. So I had to bend so my spinal cord could fully come into shape. And the anesthesia, I would say anesthetic doctor, is the one who came and did some measurements of some sort. And I kept asking the nurse, like, what's happening? Like, can you guys just tell me what's happening? Because I don't understand why I'm sitting in this position. And so the nurse kept saying that, you know what, the doctor is going to tell you everything. So the doctor came and said that I shouldn't move because they were about to put a needle in my spine. And so I was terrified. I remember holding on to my husband's hand and I was so scared. Like, I didn't want to show him how scared I was, but I'm sure he felt just how hard I was, like, grabbing his hand, that I was so scared. And I kept telling him that I don't want to have this baby. I am not ready for this. I can't do it. And so the needle went in. Didn't feel it, actually. Didn't feel the needle go in. And what was worrying was that it took a little longer than it was supposed to. So when the anesthetic doctor was trying to get the needle in, he was struggling to have it fit, or well, go where it's supposed to go. So that's what took so long. So I could hear him, like, literally whispering to himself, saying, oh my gosh, like, okay, like, I could hear him speaking underneath his voice that something was wrong, to find that the needle was a bit too short and it couldn't really reach where it was supposed to. Well, okay, he eventually managed, right? And then he told me I would feel some kind of warmth on my legs. And then that's when I started feeling the warmth and some tingling sensation on my legs. And then they put me down, made me lie down on my back. And then my gynecologist, who was going to deliver my baby, came in and he was just laughing with me and whatever. And I didn't realize how much this was such an important, like, it was such an important, well, it looked so important because of the amount of nurses and amount of doctors that were in that room. That scared me even more. I just remember the pediatrician walking up to me and saying, your baby will be out in 2 minutes. And I literally didn't feel anything because I was numbed from my waist down. And so I just saw smoke. I think that was from the laser that was cutting me. I'm not sure. I saw smoke, or I could smell smoke. And yeah, in the next 2-3 minutes, I heard my baby cry and I saw him. I don't know if I was happy, but I think the one thing that I looked at was if he had hair. And I was happy to see that he had hair, and he was screaming. And well, yeah, that was just the experience that I had. But I would say the worst experience for me after that whole scenario was when I realized that my blood was actually clotting. After the whole thing, after they'd closed me up, they'd given my baby to me, they'd moved me to I can't remember what they call that room, but it's just a room where the nurses will be teaching me to breastfeed and will be doing skin on skin with the baby and all of that. And so I couldn't feel my legs all this time. So this was around 4 p.m. in the afternoon on the 16th of January. So while I'm chilling there with my baby in that room, I noticed I was starting to be in a lot of pain. Okay, so I didn't really take it to mind. They moved us to my room and we got settled in. They put my baby in his cot and I was just chilling, literally waiting for people to come and see me. And so when my first guests came in, that was around about 7 o'clock, I think. I was still numb. On my waist downwards. So while I was lying on that bed, I couldn't feel anything on my legs or anything like that. I couldn't stand the fact that I didn't have control of my body at that point. So while my friends were there and seeing the baby, my friends were told to walk out or go out for a moment because they had to clean me or at that point I didn't even know I had like my maternity pads on. Nobody explained anything to me, but okay, I guess that's fine because I couldn't feel or see anything, so I guess it's fine. So the two nurses came in. I'll never forget the one nurse that was like literally telling me I would be okay if I can just be brave for 5 minutes. Her name is Nurse Edna. I will never forget that lady's name, because she literally held my hand and told me that she was saving my life. So what had happened was, I don't know if it was the anesthesia or what. I didn't even know I had a blood clotting problem. You know how they would ask you when you're about to go into an operating room, what are your issues? I had no idea. I had never been in a hospital before. This was actually my first time being in a hospital, sleeping in a hospital, being on a drip. It was my first time, all first experience. So Nurse Edna said to me that they had noticed that I was getting a lot of blood clots. So they pushed my bed backwards and made me like lie in a more like, I don't know, like a C kind of form, shape or whatever. And the other nurse, so they cleaned me up first, and then they put another layer of linen savers underneath me. And the lady held my hand. She squeezed my hand so much because she knew just how much pain I was going to be in. And and the other nurse that she was with, I can't remember her name, but it was a white lady. She pushed me on my belly button and she pushed out huge clots of blood. Huge clots of blood. I could hear the clots coming out like it was like splattering of blood, but it was huge. This was one experience that I think that kind of makes me feel like, listen, I don't think I'm ready for another child. That was a traumatizing experience. I was screaming at the top of my lungs. I was terrified at that point. And the fact that they had put me in that shape after I had just been cut open, it was a crazy experience. So she pressed me on my belly button and I felt those blood clots come out. As numb as I was, I felt that. It was so painful. And that lady, Nurse Edna, afterwards, she gave me such a big hug and I cried. I had never experienced anything like that. And she told me that, you know what, we were just trying to save your life. And I thanked her so much. I didn't know what was going to happen to me if I stayed with all of that blood clot in me. I don't know what was going to happen, but I'm happy they came and checked me out at that point, because I didn't even know what was happening to me. I had never experienced anything like that before. I was terrified. I don't take having a baby lightly. I respect women who give birth to their babies, whether it's vaginal birth, whether it's C-section. I respect those women. I respect us women because we go through so much. And I think after that experience, for me, I had to just love my child. There was just no way that I wasn't going to love my child after that experience. So my husband was also kicked out of the room. So after they had cleaned me up and they had given me time to just recuperate and come back to myself, clean myself, my face, and not show the people that were there just how much pain I had just experienced, they gave me 5 minutes to myself, and then they called in my friends again, and then we laughed and everything was fine until 2 days later, when my baby wasn't doing so well and I didn't notice. those are also other things that I still beat myself up for, even on this day, because I felt like, where was that motherly instinct that I was supposed to know that my child was not okay? So what had happened was that he was feeding very well, because I was breastfeeding at the time. And I remember on the second day, my boobs were so engorged, like I had so much milk. I was so happy to have so much milk, because I told myself I would be those moms who would breastfeed forever and ever and ever. So my baby was feeding very well, till a day where he was not okay. I don't know what was wrong with him. They kept injecting him to check his insulin all the time, or is it insulin or his glucose, one of the two. They were checking how his glucose levels was, and every single time it just kept going lower and lower and lower and lower, and we didn't know what the problem was. And so he just went pale, like his skin color had changed in a way. That was another scary experience, but yeah. So after the birth experience, the anesthesia took about, I would say, around about 5 to 6 hours to wear off, although it completely wears off after I'd say the 5-6 hour mark. So about 3 hours later, after my C-section, I started feeling the numbness disappearing from my waist, because that's when I started feeling excruciating pain from the C-section or whatever was happening there in that area. That's when I started feeling the pain. But I still couldn't move my legs for some time. So I would say after my C-section, which was about 3 p.m., I started feeling my legs later on around, I would say 10ish, where I could fully move my legs. But it started wearing off around 6, where I could start feeling exactly what my body had gone through. Where I could start feeling the pain of where I was cut, the pain of where I was stitched, and all of that. The stretching of the skin, I could feel that only after 6 o'clock or 6 p.m. And then after the blood clot experience, I was in a lot of pain that whole night. And with the baby feeds and all of that every 3 hours, it was so difficult to keep up with the pain and having to feed a baby, having to do all of that. The next day, my doctor came in around 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and he advised me to get up and start walking. Even though I was in so much pain, he advised me to start walking, because he had told me that if I don't start walking immediately after this experience, then my wound would get infected and it would gather pus or something like that, and that would force him to take me back to theater and clean out the infection, and then I would have to go through all of that again. So he advised me to start walking. So the walking experience was quite difficult for me. I walked that afternoon, I think about 3 p.m. The nurse came to help me out. I was in a catheter at that time, so I didn't need to go to the toilet and stuff like that. But she came in, she took out the catheter, I started walking. And while I was walking, actually funny enough, I just remembered that while I was walking, another clot fell out. A huge clot fell out. It was so embarrassing, because at that point I actually had a roommate. We were separated by a curtain, obviously, but at that time we had started being friends, because she was telling me her experiences, I was telling her my experiences. we literally had the curtain open. We were sharing a room now. It was okay. So as I was trying to walk, and because I couldn't really close my legs and walk properly at the time, my legs were a bit open, and I was just wearing a maternity pad with no underwear because I couldn't have underwear on because of the stitches and whatever was happening here. So as I was walking, the clot fell out, and funny enough, the relief I had afterwards, I felt like I could walk miles and miles and miles, kilometers and kilometers. I'm not in America. So I started walking after that. But the doctor also indicated that the clot could have been the reason why I had so much pain. So when they were squeezing out the blood clots earlier or the previous day, maybe they were not able to take everything out. And therefore, because of gravity, gravity always wins. I'll put it that way. And that's how the clot came out when I was walking. And yeah, and I think that's how I was able to walk, and I got over that whole process. Then here goes the part where I had to go and clean myself up, because I had spent over 24 hours didn't brush my teeth, didn't wash my face, didn't clean myself. I felt quite dirty. So the nurse advised me, one of the nurses, I actually forgot her name, but she advised me to just go and clean myself up, just to freshen myself up a bit, because so many guests were coming and I had so many visitors and I wasn't feeling so clean. So silly Portia, I went and I opened the bath, a warm bath, and I got into the bath, and 2 seconds later I lost balance. I just got lightheaded and I almost passed out. I remember trying to hold on to the bar of where they put the towel. I was holding on and I was shouting my husband's name, like, come and help me, I'm falling. And I just realized that when I think about it, I cringe so much, because I think if I had fallen from that bath, I would have ruined everything. Literally, the stitches, probably I would have reopened my wound again. So I called my husband. He quickly helped me. At that point, I'm naked, fully naked, and I have blood coming out of me from literally almost every angle at this point. And the nurses came, actually put me down on the floor in the bathroom, and they got me water to drink very quickly, because I was not supposed to go into a place with so much heat because of the anesthesia and the condition that I had with my blood and all of that. So that was a crazy experience as well. Yeah. I had my baby boy. He looked exactly like his father. They will betray you. But I wouldn't have it any other way. We have a very healthy baby boy, and I think after a day, we started noticing that he was a bit pale. He was a bit light, so he was very light, actually very, very fair. And we noticed that he was being weird, and in his way, in a way he would roll his eyes and things like that. So those are things that got us worried a bit, but we didn't take it seriously, because obviously we didn't know. It was our first baby, it was our first child. We had never experienced a baby at that size, at that age, or anything like that. So immediately after, the doctor came and said that, okay, we're going to check his glucose and see how his glucose is doing. And so they checked his glucose. His glucose was fine. That morning was fine, because it was after a feed. So every time after a feed, his glucose would be fine. But once we would wait maybe an hour or two, because I would feed him every 3 hours. So once we would wait maybe an hour or two, his glucose levels would go down, and which was very worrying because it's supposed to remain constant. So the nurse came. I gave birth a Thursday afternoon. We were there Friday, Saturday. So the Saturday afternoon, the nurse came and checked his glucose again. His glucose kept going up and down, up and down, up and down, which was very worrying. Until, I think for me, this is where it hit me so hard, was when she took him from me and she said, I'm taking him for tests, right? And at that point, I felt like no child should be taken from their mother, not in that way, because it sounded scary already. So she took him, and they went and ran some tests. That time they had called his pediatrician, who was out of town at the time, and he called his colleague to come in. And so they took some blood tests, and I'd asked my husband to go with, because at the time I was also still recovering, so I couldn't go with. So my husband went, and they had to draw blood from him. I can't remember where exactly. They drew quite a bit of blood, a good amount of blood from him, and they took my husband out, and they said that it's not something you want to see. It's a painful experience. So he came back, and now we are both sitting in the room scared. I am bawling my eyes out. I couldn't have just gone through all of this for nothing. Honestly, I couldn't. So they took him for about an hour or an hour and a half. I was not seeing my baby. And at that point, we just started praying. We could only pray. There was nothing else we could do, nothing else we could say. We called our pastor. We told him what was happening, and they should just pray with us and all of that. Fine. They bring him back an hour or two later, and then they tell us that he's gonna need to go to NICU, right? And so it's a neonatal intensive care unit for babies. So initially I just thought, okay, anything ICU related is serious for me. I had never been in a hospital before, but anything ICU is so like it's an emergency. I remember the nurse that was with us at the time, that was taking care of him, said that we should just say bye to him and would come and see him in the intensive care unit at like a certain time interval. Okay, fine. We go with him and we see where they'll put him and all of that. And so the nurse also indicated that no, he's also got jaundice, right? So jaundice, okay, I wasn't really too scared about jaundice because I know what jaundice is. I had read about it. Although at the time, I did kind of get scared because I thought, was all of this being caused by the jaundice? But initially it wasn't. So when the blood test came back, it was my blood type that was a problem for my son. So I'm an O positive, and I think my husband was an AB blood type, or has an AB blood type, and my baby had gotten an A plus blood type. And so it had looked like now my blood type, my O enzymes had been fighting his enzymes, and that's why he was weak at some point and he couldn't eat, or well, that's why his glucose levels kept going up and down. It was because my O enzymes kept fighting him. I don't know the actual medical terms of it. I'm just saying it how I think I understood it at the time. And so it wasn't nice hearing that it was kind of my fault in a way that I put my child in that position because of my blood group or my blood type. So I was terrified, I was scared. I think I was more terrified that I had to leave my child and sleep in a separate room, and he had to sleep on a drip and wearing some plastic glasses to cover him from the light that he was under, where I saw other children in the unit who were in bad conditions as well. That was a traumatizing experience. I never wanted to see that. And like every time when I would walk into the NICU, I would make sure I look directly at my child. I don't want to look at anyone else's child because I just didn't want it to traumatize me even more. So I would go into the NICU every 3 hours once again for his feeds, because I was breastfeeding at the time, so I would go in every 3 hours to breastfeed. And he was on a drip called Polygam, and that was the drip that was cleaning out basically all the enzymes that were fighting him and fighting, I don't know if it was fighting his immune system or what, but the drip that he was on was helping him fight those enzymes, and he was excreting them from urine and his stool. After he had done excreting all those enzymes, we were in the hospital for 3 days, right? So I had been discharged the Sunday, but I couldn't leave my son in the hospital, so my doctor arranged for us that I could stay an extra night in the hospital until my child was discharged. So once that happened, when we went to go check on him and how he was doing, his pediatrician had said that everything was fine and that his jaundice was also going down. So I would have to come back after 5 days to just check up on him again, and just to see that he's progressing well, he's growing well, he's eating well, and that he's also excreting well. So after that, really, I stayed an extra night in the hospital, and I would go and feed him every 3 hours. Then after that, that's actually the story of my miracle birth with my baby boy. It was a beautiful experience, with its ups and downs. I won't lie, I would never necessarily tell anyone how this experience, I don't think anyone would ever understand my experience. I guess everybody would have to experience it their own way, but this is definitely my miracle experience with my baby boy. My name is Portia Tshilisanani Mjikeliso, and this is my miracle birth story.